go ahead and call our public hearing to order. We will have a public hearing at 5 o'clock, and it is 5 o'clock, and then we'll have our council workshop at 5:30. So at this point in time, I'll turn it over to Pete for the presentation of the budget.
Okay, Mayor, I don't see any public.
No.
See any questions? If any of you have any other questions of the budget, again, the document is balanced. It is hasn't changed since we've last talked. I had to make some just adjustments to SPLOST and the CIP just to match the requests. But other than that, the bottom line did not change. So again, kudos to the departments, and I think we're solid this particular coming year. So we're ready if you are.
Did y'all have any questions, any comments, concerns? Jack?
No, Pete and I talked earlier and nothing had changed.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
We're still waiting on a couple of things, and we still have that, you know, library funding is still outstanding. If we can decide if we want to do something else. I saw they're going to a county meeting here this week.
Right.
But those are things we can decide between now and the middle of June.
That's right. The 20,000 increase is in there, so you can elect to take it out or just to add to it, so we could decide that later. But overall, the document is that's what we're talking about.
Wes, you good with everything? Any questions? Okay.
I did let you know.
Anything as far as cost of living?
Was it 1%?
1%.
Okay, I wasn't here at the last one, so I didn't know if anything was explained about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Frank, do you have any questions or any comments, concerns?
Everything's still the same. It's fine.
I did talk with Chad Alexander today from the tax commissioner standpoint, trying to see if we have any from the digest, and he said no. So probably late June we should have those numbers and understand where we are. So with our growth, John. Okay, we got some new mics, so we're just testing this. It'll be a little easier. So.
But they're saying they can't hear back there.
Yeah, I start working on it because the speak. I go much louder speaking.
But Eve can hear.
You're
fantastic. That's all that matters.
Can you two hear back there? Well, they can hear.
Just can't hear over there.
Well, y'all just need to move over here.
Yeah, so depending on...
Sit next to Ricky, he said he can hear.
Depending on the digest, again, we present you where the numbers are. So if, again, it's over a threshold, we'll have to acknowledge that. You'll have to either keep it the same. We can talk.
Okay.
But that's based off the digest.
It's a digest, roll back.
Well, if we have... Stop. If we have nobody from the public to question, or Eve, did you have any questions? I mean, we could call on the media, I guess, if you had any questions or.
I mean, not particularly. It seemed very self-explanatory. Any questions I did have, I was able to ask Jessica and Karen, and they were able to answer any questions I had very, very nicely.
Perfect. Okay. All right. So I guess we will need to wait till 5:30 to start the council meeting. Is that correct? That's the published time.
I pulled it together,
so we could go ahead and go into the council meeting?
Yes,
Okay.
we did that purposely. And again, we never know. Again,
right.
We don't want to hold anybody up on a certain people have questions. So we could go right into the meeting, and that's the way that she...
So just to be clear, no millage increases or anything like that?
No millage change whatsoever.
Wanted to put that in.
Whatsoever.
Put that out there.
Whatsoever.
Well, that was to be seen till mid-June. I might put you on the spot, man.
Oh, Jack.
I would never do that.
Okay, yes, but you're right, Wes. No millage increase, no millage change.
At this point.
At this point, period. All right, let's go ahead and go on into the...
And I want to make another comment to
Okay.
this will be the 6th year that we've been able to work inside of the funding that we received. So that's a testament to not only management, but to this council as well. So put that on record.
Good point. Thank you. Thank you very much. I know that's been something that's been on everybody's radar. I mean, it's not something we take lightly. And to be in the position that we are, like you said, I think it's a testament to management. I think Pete's worked extremely hard to keep this budget contained and maintained, and allowed us to provide the services and the things that we need to do for the community. And our management team has done a phenomenal job with doing everything that they possibly can to be respectful of that. So, any other comments on the budget before we go on into the old business section? Okay. All right. Discussion of the Urban Redevelopment Agency for the City of Tifton, and in our packet that Jessica sent out, we do have several applications. We had all suggested names. We have several applications, basically people who've responded that yes, they would be interested in serving, and we're waiting to hear on responses from a couple of other people. If you'll recall, we do need to have 7 board members, and we currently have 5 applications. Any discussion we need to go over on specifics on that, Pete?
This is the last step. Rob has completed the resolution. We're lockstep now with the agency itself. The designated map is done, because we're going to talk about enterprise zone in just a minute, but everything is done. So if you are ready, and we have the 7 plus an alternate, this could be ready for approval. And again, to reiterate that at the end of the month, if this is in place, Bruce and I will be and go with the URA. So this is obviously a big goal of yours, but this is kind of the dream come true, where we're moving in a big different direction with regards to another facet of development.
Okay, excellent.
Since this was prepared, Jeremy Campbell stated
He would be interested?
he was
Oh,
not.
he was not, okay.
What about MJ Hall? I thought,
I had mentioned him before.
He doesn't live in the city.
Yeah, they have to live in the city.
Oh, he's not in the city?
He doesn't reside in the city.
Okay, well,
he didn't, oh, so I didn't know if, so the urban redevelopment doesn't have, if you have a
They
financial,
do.
you have to live in the city limits.
Bruce, is that correct statement? They do have to, they do have to reside in the city to be, they have to be a City of Tifton resident, not business. Their business, you can't go by that like you can on the Downtown Development Authority. They have to,
The city attorney and I looked at
Yeah.
that, and they have to reside within the jurisdictional boundaries of the municipality.
Okay.
So that's why MJ would
so
not be
we've
interested.
got 5 people who've agreed. That's correct.
Mhm.
We're waiting for response from several others.
Right,
I did talk to Johnny today, and he is going to be talking with Major Battles and Barbara Campbell, so he feels confident.
Is
that
Johnny
they'll
not gonna be here tonight?
no, he's having surgery tomorrow,
Okay.
so he's not gonna be here.
I'd really like his input, being that this
Yeah.
is going to be really affecting his district.
Yeah, well, I know that Major Battle and Barbara were 2 people that he was
Really high on, okay.
Yeah, was really wanting to have on there, so that will, if those 2 do agree, which I have a feeling they will, then with that will give us our 7. And we'll just need an alternate, I'll say it right in a minute, an alternate, I was trying to say alternative, at that point, so I think we've got a good mix of, a good diversity. I think we've got a good mix of ages, backgrounds. So I think we'll have a really good board to work with on that. Any other comments on the Urban Redevelopment Agency, or?
Just a reminder that you will also need to, elect the chair and the vice chair. when you're going
Do
through
we do
those.
that, or do they do that?
You do that.
We would do that, okay. I would assume, Rob, let me ask you this, since you brought that up. Would it be pertinent to have a meeting with all of them first, with them and the council, and then we select someone there, or do we just appoint somebody? How does that process work?
Well, that's a good question. To be honest with you, I really don't know. I've never been through that process.
Okay.
But certainly, for the committee itself, maybe make
A recommendation to
I'd like
council?
that,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd really like their input. Bruce, do you have any suggestions or any input on the selection of a chair and vice chair, and should they meet with us, should we meet with them, how this first setup will go?
You know, the statute says that the mayor and council shall appoint.
Okay, right,
Whatever works best for this community.
okay. So we've got that flexibility to be able to do that, okay, excellent. That sounds good, that was a good answer, Bruce, thank you.
We also got to be sure they want to be the chair. and
That's
vice
right.
chair, so-
That's what I'm
And then-
saying.
and
They can make a
remember-
recommendation.
They're also staggered terms. so-
Sure, that's right, okay. All right, well, if there's anybody else that you would like to add to the list, I guess we still have time for consideration of that, so that way Jessica can make sure that they are a city resident, and then make sure that they do want to serve. So if there's anyone else, just if you'll send that
Will
to
there be
them.
any council appointee? Like, we're not
Like we have at DDA.
yeah, like in,
We hadn't
Ex
talked
officio?
about it or thought about it, but
I thought we said there could be, isn't that correct, Rob? There could be a sitting council member appointed?
Yes, I think that's right. I'm pretty sure that's right, Frank.
okay.
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay, all right, excellent. All right, any other comments, questions, concerns about the URA? Okay. Service delivery status update. Rob?
Okay, basically, as you all know, we have been working with the Department of Community Affairs to submit another service delivery strategy. Last year, DCA agreed to extend the time for us to file a strategy till the end of June. We had a conversation with DCA a week, 10 days ago about what they would require at this point as far as an update. And we were informed by DCA that they could accept another letter similar to what we did last year, basically extending the strategy.
And this was the conversation that you and Tony Rowell
That's correct.
had with the conference call.
And Andy Welch. And so basically DCA was, go ahead, get us a letter. So basically I prepared a letter for Tony Rowell's review, the county's review, pretty much putting the same thing in there that we had last year. Now last year we extended service delivery strategy as to all services. It was my understanding from going through some prior emails back about a year ago that there was still some outstanding issues, not only on E911, water and sewer and landfill, but I think there were some other services that were under discussion at that time, such as the library. I think maybe there was road maintenance, and I think there was a few, I think Main Street was still kind of out there under discussion. So the idea that I had as far as my letter was very similar last year, just saying, listen, if you'll accept this letter, we're going to give you an update on where we are with water and sewer. Of course, that's in litigation, and that will be resolved once we get the lawsuit resolved. E911, as you know, we have issues with non-emergency calls and how that's going to be funded. According to the law, the city is required to make payments, for non-emergency calls. So we're still working through E911. I believe we got all the issues with landfill have been resolved, so that's no longer out there. But the long and the short of it is that the idea is that we'll extend it for another year. We'll continue to work with the county, work through these other services, and then by the end of June 30, 2020, that we would submit a revised service delivery strategy as to all of the services. What's important about that, of course, is that if you do not have a verified service delivery strategy, then of course the Department of Community Affairs can impose the sanctions, which limits your abilities to get grants and other monies. So you kind of have that as a tool. So I sent that letter, the draft, on to Tony Rowell, and he sent me back a letter basically removing the requirement that we submit a service delivery strategy on all services in a year. He just wanted to deal with E911 and water and sewer.
But he was okay with it, though. I remember you reported to us when y'all were on the conference call, he was okay with it at that time.
That was my understanding. Now, when I got the letter back, naturally he removed the language in there, which we had in our letter last year, that we recognize that in the event we fail to reach an agreement and submit a service delivery strategy on that timeline, that DCA could impose sanctions under the statute. So in consultation with Andy Welch, the firm that we've retained to assist us in these negotiations, we feel it's extremely important that we have another year deadline, to work through these issues. I sent Tony Rowell a letter Friday, actually, explaining to him that this is not what I believe we talked about. My letter is consistent with what we did last year, and that, you know, what I was proposing to go ahead and submit this letter to DCA, giving us another year deadline to work through, you know, all of the service issues that we believe still are subject to some conversations and negotiations. Now, I did tell Mr. Rao that, you know, in the event that the county does not agree, you know, to have a one-year deadline to submit a new service delivery strategy next year, then we are prepared to go to mediation under the service delivery statute. The service delivery statute basically, you know, it's multi-part when it talks about resolving service delivery strategy issues. The first step in the process is that if you're not able to reach an agreement on service delivery, then you are to initiate some type of alternative dispute resolution process prior to DCA imposition of the sanctions. And so we are prepared to take the first step in the mediation process should we need to go through with the service delivery mediation process by the statute. So I have informed Mr. Rao we have 2 mediators suggested that we have proposed. One is a former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Another one, individual named Ted Mecker up in Atlanta. Both of those are well attuned to service delivery issues, very good mediators. So I suggested those 2 mediators to Mr. Rao. I've also given the dates of their availability. So what I have basically put out there was if we cannot agree to extend this service delivery strategy for another year on all services, then we are prepared to go ahead and proceed with mediation. And in the event we are unsuccessful at the mediation, then of course at the end of the month, DCA will impose the sanctions.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm following the timeline and I've got the conversations clear in my mind. So when y'all had the conference call with DCA, when you and Tony Rowell and Andy Welch were all on the conference call with the Department of Community Affairs, DCA at that time said, we will accept a letter from you, but these are the very specific things that have to be in that letter, right?
Well, DCA didn't tell us what to put in the letter.
But they said, but there has to be a letter with a deadline and we can extend it for a year and these are the things that have to be in place.
There was no set deadline. One of the things, you know, we had gone back and forth. I know the conversation was initially to extend it for a year.
Right.
After having a conversation with Andy Welch, we kind of had the idea, well, perhaps maybe we ought to extend it to June 30, 2021, because it may take that long for the litigation to get through, including if there's any appeals to the litigation. But then, you know, had a conversation with Pete. We thought it might be better just go ahead and let's just do it for a year.
Yeah.
And so that's what I put in the letter. So it's always been my understanding that we were looking, just like we were last year this time, we were looking to extend and submitting a new service delivery strategy on all issues by the end of this month.
But I guess what I'm getting to is at that point, and during that conversation though, Mr. Rowell seemed to be in favor, or at least agree that this was the right way to go and that the county would follow suit
That's correct.
and sign off on the letter and we'd be on our way.
Right.
What happened?
Well, you know, evidently, you know, they must have had some type of change of heart, thinking that they want to resolve all the service delivery issues, all the service delivery services, and say those are done, and then just move forward and talk about water and sewer and E911. But that was not my understanding. My
Right.
understanding was that, you know, because I went back and looked at some of the emails between council last year, and it appeared that
Right.
there was other issues that needed to be discussed, that we had still in negotiations and discussions about some other services other than E911, landfill, and water and sewer. And so that's why the terminology of the letter that went to DCA last year is that we still have some services that are under negotiation.
Right.
And it said, most notably,
Right.
E911, water and sewer, and landfill. So the letter says
Basically the
This
same
letter
thing.
is the same thing as they agreed to
Yeah.
last year.
exactly. And so what we're doing, that was What I'm seeking from the county at this point is, let's agree to do what we did last
Right.
year. Now, my concern is that the county wants to shut the door maybe on all the other services and just deal with E911
Well, but
water service.
this is the problem though. I mean, that sounds, you know, I guess they have that prerogative, but with the sanctions strips the city of Tifton and Tift County from the ability to receive grant money from DAVE.
Well, let me just kind of move a little bit forward with the process.
Okay.
So basically, under the statute, you go to a mediation prior to the imposition of the sanctions, according to the statute.
But that's gonna cost us legal fees and more money and, right?
It will.
Yeah.
So anyway, if to initiate mediation prior to the imposition of sanctions, that's a voluntary, mediation process. If you are unsuccessful at that mediation, then the statute says that after the imposition of sanctions, then either party can file a petition under the service delivery statute to require mandatory mediation. And so that's the petition that's filed in court under the statute saying we are asking for mandatory mediation. And then according to the statute, once you have filed that petition, they appoint a senior judge, to preside over the case. And then the court can by order, withhold the sanctions in abeyance pending the disposition of the case. So if we have to go down the road to filing a petition seeking mandatory mediation, we would present to the court, hopefully a consent order between the city and the county,
Well,
holding the sanctions in abeyance.
I'll just tell you what it sounds like, and I know that's not right. I know you would turn purple if I said that in court, but it sounds to me like somebody pulled the record. I mean, somebody just snatched the rug out from under us is what's happened in essence.
I don't know what's
I
going
know,
on behind the
I know,
scenes.
but we've had conversations with our counterparts on the county commission. Everybody seemed to be everybody except one that I have spoken to. And the county, I will not say in this meeting what the county commission chairman told me at the last Tift County Development Authority, but I was mortified.
Well,
And I feel like, here we've taken we're putting together an urban redevelopment agency. We're finally creating something that's going to be so positive for the urban redevelopment area. And DCA is a big part of that in that community development block grant. I understand what you're saying when you say that mediation takes place prior to any sanctions. I get all that. But at the same time, this council has worked in good faith. This council has done everything within our power to do the right thing by the Urban Redevelopment Agency. And if we can't apply for DCA grants, such as the Community Development Block Grant to build a youth development center in partnership with YMCA, because the county won't sign a letter that they signed last year extending 1 year, nothing changes. Not one thing changes if they sign that letter. It just satisfies DCA. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And then it backs those sanctions and everything off of us.
Except they wanted a grant. They wanted to push that Lutz College
Right,
grant,
which-
which is the reason they signed the letter then.
Then, exactly.
What they're doing is the exact same thing they did when we did service delivery. There
Right.
was no negotiation.
No, it
The
was,
county was,
This
this
is
is
how
the
we're
way it
gonna do
is.
it, yeah.
We're not changing, take it or
if
leave
you don't like it, that's too
it. That's
bad.
the way it is.
Yeah.
So there was no
There was-
discussion
you're
and back
right.
and forth. This is it.
So so at this point, again, going back to my initial question, trying to kind of play through the timeline and what's happened and make sure that I'm clear on when people ask me about it so I can speak correctly. So because they won't sign this letter, I know you've sent the letter now back to Rowell
I have.
and no response yet from him.
It was hand delivered Friday at lunch, so.
Okay. So, I don't think that they're gonna come back and say, we'll sign the letter. I think they're gonna hold firm based on what the county commission chairman told me last Thursday at the Tipp County Development Authority meeting, and I think that's where our problem is. The next step will then be for you to, I mean, if we can't even agree to write a letter, how are we gonna agree on a mediator? It seems so overwhelming.
It needs to be put, let's just cut through all the crap, pardon my French.
Oh, go ahead.
You know, I tried to call the county commissioner.
Right.
Did not get a return phone call. I know this person got a message because in
Sure.
their business, that's how they operate.
Sure.
So no message. I know you talked to somebody, no response you got. But we need to put, the pressure that was put on the county and the city, if you recall, and you recalled all kind of names by the people that were in charge of that, because we were wanting to follow the rules. Well, there's a county commissioner now that's up in arms and scheduled a meeting to come up here at 6 o'clock about, trash in their area. If she wanted city people there,
Right.
then guess what? Wouldn't have been scheduled at 6 o'clock when the city
Council's meeting, yeah.
Put it right back on
Yeah.
those two. It's in their districts that's gonna be affected and not get that. And that's where the pressure needs to come. We can't do anything to force the county to do it. The only thing that's gonna happen is if those two there can find two others to put the pressure and say, sign the letter, or you're not gonna get this community center that is so badly needed. And, I mean, that's the only thing to do.
Well, let me ask you a question. All right, we have loss negotiations coming up when?
Probably in 2 years.
2 years.
In
2 years.
2022?
2021.
2021, okay.
And lost is, it's just so anybody watching or listening, you spell that, this local
That's
option
local
sales
option
tax.
sales
So
tax.
people
That's-
understand what we're talking about.
That's
yeah.
what our sales tax,
Yeah.
how we're funded, and it's a percentage based on each penny. The library funding, all right, so DCA wants to know who's going to provide the service and who is going to fund it. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the library, our issues with the library is that we're the only one funding it.
No.
No,
No, they're
no,
funding,
they're funding,
they're
They are
funding
funding.
it
yeah,
from the
from the general fund, so that we're also paying, City of Tiverton residents are also paying into it.
We're paying, so we get hit twice. We went to the county and said, hey, we'll fund it based on the population within the city limits, which would increase the amount we do. But wait a minute, county, when you fund from your piece, it needs to come from a special tax district, so city residents aren't hit twice. Absolutely not.
Okay,
The library's gonna make it like it is.
that should be self-explanatory. Now, the road issue is that the city taxpayer pays into the county for roads and services, and there's no roads being paved.
They will not, their comment was, they will not come into the city to pave roads because there's not enough money in their budget. And I said, well, that's your problem. You decide how much the budget is, so why should city residents pay for roads that are only outside the city limits? I mean, it.
Would
the
that
most
be more of a
absurd-
loss discussion, though? I mean,
It's something it's really tangled, but the bottom line is that.
well, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is I just don't want to go into another legal
I
battle
don't
with the
either,
county.
Wes, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's.
I think we could fix the library issue.
We
We can fix the library.
That is very simple,
Yeah.
and it's not enough money to move that special tax district millage rate. I mean, it would move it up 1/10 if any, because I'm sure they have a contingency that they can put, well, they put $50,000 in there or something like that, something minimal like that.
Well, it's exhausting, it's a waste of money, in my opinion. If we could focus all of this energy and effort that we're using to fix this thing and put it to good, there's no telling what we could accomplish, but.
Do we have a reason why they're not signed there? Have
Yeah,
they said specifically why they're not?
I have not, and like I say, it's perplexing to me, and the reason why I wrote the letter on Friday after I got Ronald's response to mine was really two things. Convince them that it doesn't make any sense, because it's the same thing we did last year.
Right.
Let's just do it again. That's the easy road. Now, we have to have a plan B. because we have to protect our grant money. And Plan B is going through the process. In order to go through the process, we have to start out with the mediation. And so that's why I'm initiating that now. I'm saying, here's 2 mediators, and here's, I think I gave them 10 dates that they're available. So follow this, if, more than likely the mediation, may not be successful.
How does mediation work?
Wait, just a second, before we get,
Okay,
let's, to Wes's point. I'm tired of fooling with them, and they're not gonna budge, and the city of Tifton will take care of these things that need to be taken care of, and the county can just go wherever. If we sign the letter, if we go ahead with the letter that Tony Rowell has said, is that all that's missing is the library, road maintenance?
No.
Can we, because we will do what needs to be done for the library. The county, more than one, said library's obsolete, everything's on the internet, why do you need it? That's their thought. Heard it with my own ears. They're not gonna fund anything else. We will do what needs to be done for the residents of the city of Tifton, and we'll take care of those in the county that come too. Let's go ahead from, can we sign, because the money we spend on legal fees, we can give to the library.
Well, it doesn't matter, we just sign it, they've got to sign it too.
But it's one that Tony Rowell sent that he's in agreement with. That's my point.
Oh, you said sign the one that...
That one, if he's, what's missing from the one that he sent, that we might could adjust or get him to adjust?
Well, there's several. One, there's no deadline, and there is no agreement on the imposition of sanctions should there not be an agreement. I would not advise us to...
So it needs to be a deadline.
So it needs to be a deadline. Surely they will agree to that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
their push is, they want everything else, if you read between the lines, they want everything else to be done. They only want to deal with E911 and the water and sewer.
And those are in the legal.
That's the only ones that they want to deal with. As far as they're concerned, all the rest of them are done. They're not going to give to Main Street. One of them asked me, what does Main Street do for the county? Seriously? What does Main Street do for the county? You asked me that and you're on the county commission?
Well, it's that $58 million portfolio of
That's the
property
thought
that they collect taxes
process.
on.
That's the thought process we're dealing with. Good God.
Well, okay.
So let's see how we can do this, and to the legal fees and all this, we need to spend that money on
But we
something
need
other
to
than legal
we need to
fees.
go back to, we can't just let this stay open-ended with just, with letters from Tony to you to Tony. We need to nail down a specific deadline date that if they have not come to terms and will agree to this by a certain deadline, we're forced to go another route.
We have to start preparing and going according to the statute for mediation. Because, we need to, we have to have Plan B.
Yeah.
And Plan B needs to be moving at the same time we're trying to work out the letter. But we have to have, we have to start going through the process under the statute in order to protect ourselves on that grant. Now, once, if everything goes to hell in a handbasket on the letter, we've got to have Plan B in place. Because once, once VCA imposes the sanctions, that then triggers our right to file the petition for mandatory mediation. And the statute says that the judge can hold the sanctions in abeyance against one or both parties.
What I was going to ask you, that on the mediation, how does the mediation work? Is it a one-day process and then boom, it's decided? How does that work?
Usually they don't last long. Usually they don't last longer than a day. But generally, what happens in a mediation is that you usually have a caucus. Where everybody, both sides are in the room. The mediator's there, and the mediator explains to you, hey, listen, this is a great process. This is a great way to get things worked out. It's going to save you a bunch of money. Nobody's going to be happy, but at least you're going to get it resolved today. So then once that joint meeting is held, then you break out into groups, one side, the other side, and the mediator then goes to one side, then goes back to the other side, and then tries to work out an agreement. But I think what is important here is, I'll certainly do everything I can, and we can have some more conversations about the letter. You know, what do we have to have in it? I do want to consult with Andy Welch. I think he's back in town. Consult with him and see what his, you know, his issues are. I think I know what they are, but I'm going to talk with him. But, you know, that's why I gave them mediators and I gave them dates. And I said, you know, we need to know who, I told Tony in my letter, I said, find out who you want to be at the mediation from your group, and then find out their availability based on
Have
these.
they discussed this publicly at all? Has the county commission discussed this publicly?
I don't know.
Why don't we just march over to the county commission meeting, at their public meeting, and ask them
Tomorrow.
publicly, how come you won't sign the same letter you signed last year? What's the problem?
Well, if,
Here's what's gonna happen.
Or get a headline in the paper that says, block granted to the redevelopment thing?
Well, it's
And
so
see if
confusing.
that
I'm
doesn't
not
get
opposed. Let me throw this out. I mean, I almost think we need a press conference to explain to people how this works, because people, we understand it because we're living it every day, but I don't think most of the folks really understand what's going on. It looks like, oh, they're just
Nor do
arguing,
they
but
care.
it's,
That's
when
yeah.
when you
and
go through
that's-
the process, I mean, you look at the statute, it can be confusing because
Yeah,
you've
it's
got this.
very
You have
confusing.
this pre or prior to imposition of sanctions mediation, then you have the sanctions, then you have the petition for mandatory mediation, and that's when the judge, you know, can hold those sanctions in abeyance until the case is finally disposed of. More than likely what would happen, if you get into that mandatory mediation petition, that judge is probably going to just not do anything until the water and sewer and that litigation is concluded. So one thing I want to make sure of that, you know, and urge y'all is that we need, I know you want to not expend fees and attorney's fees, but we need to keep our process moving towards the mediation so we can implement Plan B should we cannot work out Plan A, which is the letter. And that way, I would be fairly confident that the county would join in a consent order signed by the judge holding the sanctions in abeyance. I am equally confident.
But
we don't know that.
But if,
Yeah.
okay, we don't know that.
Yeah.
But I am, you know, but I could say that I'm 99% sure that the judge would hold the sanctions in abeyance, at least as to the city. Because what I want to be able to show the judge is that we have been working in good faith. We have been trying to, you know, get these meetings. We have been trying to schedule the mediations. And
well, we've requested public meetings with the county. We've requested, you know,
Can you
Andy, well-
can you not go over to Tony Rowell's office tomorrow morning and ask him why we can't put a deadline in there and why we can't put it about, I mean, get an answer for those two things that are keeping you from.
I will have that conversation. I
And,
did not, you know,
and
I've not
see
called
what
him
he
today,
says.
but I
Well,
will
go
call
park
him
yourself at
tomorrow,
his door.
and I'll say, Tony, what's the problem here?
I mean, let's find out what the issue is, and if it's,
But, and Jack, I agree with that, and I will do that. And, you know, I will, but as Julie said, I can't have this thing open-ended. I don't have the time to be going back and forth.
well, I realize, but you had a couple of reasons why we couldn't sign the letter the way he had it. And not only was it those two things that you just mentioned, but it's, you know, we're saying the other things are done. Road maintenance, library, whatever other, well, they're done. That's fine. They're done.
well, I don't think
But-
that by taking those out, I don't think it was going to satisfy DCA. Is that a correct statement?
I think it would satisfy DCA as far as if we're telling them these are the services that we still have at issue. Now, I think that they're gonna wanna have a deadline.
Let me ask you this
Yeah,
though.
you gotta have that.
Well, let me
and
ask you this
so-
though, because if those 4 services are wrapped up into this lawsuit, that deadline, what if the deadline comes before the end of the lawsuit?
Then we'd have to extend it again.
Which we have
So
the right to
if you
do.
don't have a deadline and the 4 issues are in the lawsuit, once the lawsuit is settled, then that aspect is settled as well. And we don't have to go into mediation, we don't have to go into, what you're saying is go ahead. They're assuming all roads, no matter if it's inside the city limits or not, are county roads. That's why the city taxpayer pays into the county road maintenance, while they have not helped in any form or fashion to pave or reconstruct anything inside
No, they're not
of
assuming
those
that.
city, of our city limits. That's what is going to be their answer to that, because I remember
But
we
they're-
said that several times in
they're-
several meetings with the county.
Well, the county chairman argued with me as whether it was in the city or whether it was in the county.
And that's
And
just
so-
one, but I'm talking about the others, past commissioners, as well as current commissioners, we have had discussions with.
differentiate between the city and the county.
And there was, all roads are in the county, period, is what they claim, you know. But you're saying go ahead and assume those are correct.
Don't-
And then the
yes.
four others are already gonna be tied to that
Are
lawsuit.
the other, all four tied up in the lawsuit?
When you say all
The one, or
four,
whatever they're saying is left, what it was.
what we said in our, in the
The
letter.
E911, they're gonna have Supreme Court ruling to defend their position on that, so I think we're at the creek without a
That's
paddle on
right,
that.
and we've had conversations about what is the best means by which that is to be funded. We've talked about looking at call data from all agencies that are utilizing them. I understand from talking with Chief Bennett that we have a dedicated console just for our police department, and perhaps the better way to fund that is just to pay for that staff for that time. A lot of the non-emergency calls, y'all, are just the ones where the police are riding by the house and saying, just check, 614 North Tift, everything's fine. Those are the type of calls they're getting.
Now, they call a non-emergency call like if it's someone, let's just say somebody's fallen and broken their arm, or an elderly person has fallen, they're not calling that an emergency. They're calling only emergencies, I guess. I guess what you're saying is define what an emergency is.
That's right, and that's one of the things that we talked about several weeks ago, with Tony and I, is, okay, we got to figure out how we're going to define emergent and non-emergent calls.
Can we do that without having to go to a lawsuit, though? Or
Yeah, I mean-
mediation?
We
I
can't
think-
even get, they won't even
But
meet with us.
But which one
No,
do we
no,
have to
but
have?
they had a great, you guys talked a lot. I'm saying you
Yeah.
and Tony Rowell had,
And you felt very
the
good
last
about it. You were
couple of
very
meetings
complimentary.
we've
Yeah.
had, it's been
Yeah.
very
Very
upbeat,
positive.
very
Yeah.
positive conversation. So I was, and then all of a sudden this comes out of left field, and I know where it's coming from, but I think the issues are, I think we can get the library funded through the special tax district, but I can go ahead and tell you during their budgeting, they're probably going to say, oh, expenses have risen in 911, so the millage rate is not going to change, but we'll transfer that service over into the special tax district. I guarantee you that's what they do. And that'll satisfy that, but that millage rate's not going to change.
No, their
You know.
taxes went up on the people
It is.
outside.
It probably won't even go up enough that they have to
they didn't.
because there's a certain part of that percentage that they could go up without having to make a public notice of it, so they can make that change and
But
and
can we
fund
put,
that.
but can we put a deadline on the E911 thing, and then the deadline is when the lawsuit is set?
but the only thing they have to do is define what an emergency is.
Well,
And then we would have to agree with that. I mean, I don't see why there has to
Taking them a
be a
year to
deadline
do
on that either.
but we do need to find out how that's going to be funded. That's where we really are. I don't think it's going to be a big problem defining emergent and non-emergent calls. When I talked to Chief Bennett, he said, listen, everything that comes in fire department's an emergency call.
That's right.
And, PD is a little bit different because a lot of that's just property checks, letting them know where they are. But this is, I think the plan should be, I say Andy Welch was out of the country last week, and I sent this letter. I was working with one of the associates up there. I will call Andy tomorrow and say, I want you to review this letter and tell me the issues. I believe the issues are going to be that they want to exclude the imposition of sanctions, which I think is in his mind, in my mind, is a pretty big deal. You got to have that hammer, because what happens is if you just want to go and revisit a service under the statute, you have the right to go under mediation, but yet the law is unclear as to whether or not DCA has the authority to impose sanctions undertaking that route. So With that being said, what I would, I'd like to confer with Andy, let him take a look at the letter, see what, gives him real heartburn about it. I think what I'm hearing from Consul is that as far as the Form 2s that were sent last year, that you're okay with all of those services except for E911 and water and sewer. Because if you remember, our Form 1, we had asterisks by numerous services. So if you say, listen, we'll concede those, let's worry about E911 and water and sewer, then that may narrow, the issues as far as what we have to address. I don't think it's going to change the idea that we need a deadline. We need to be able to have the sanctions available to us should they not come to an agreement.
So are they satisfied with landfill?
So the landfill's taken care of now?
It is. They had, I think there were some questions about post-closure money, and I think that's been resolved.
Okay.
We can't force them to do anything about the library. We can't force them to help pay for Leroy Rogers Center. We can't force them to pay for Main Street. I mean, so we can beat our head against the wall, but they ain't gonna do it.
No, but the frustrating thing is, like you just stated, there was such a positive momentum that was going. It's like, wow, maybe we're finally getting somewhere. And then once again, it just kind of gets snatched out.
It's called reeling Rob in
Let me
and
ask,
playing the city for suckers.
No,
No.
but they were, all the conversations that we originally had were going through the services. That's when we got DCA on the phone, said, get us a letter. And so we said, listen, this should be, fairly easy. What happened is that when we thought we had, we were going to extend this thing for another year, they said, well, we're just going to deal with these services and we're going to take the sanctions out. That's not a discussion that I had with Tony Rowell.
That's exactly right, and he knew good and well at the end of the day.
Can we check and see if there has been any public discussion about this with the commission? Can we?
their minutes should be online.
Yeah, they should minutes.
They do, they put their minutes online?
Yeah.
Well, they used to, they still do.
I think well, I haven't checked in a while, but I mean,
I didn't think they did.
There has not been an agenda item, there hasn't, from what I
So-
see every meeting, there has not been, I've asked the county manager, there has not been any discussions publicly.
So who's, well, I know who's calling the shots on this based on the conversation I had.
Well,
And that is not right. You can't have one person taking control of something like this and throwing this whole community into a tailspin.
You can,
That
you have
should-
three others that go
That
with you.
should be illegal.
What I have asked Tony Rowell to do is give me the names of the people that he wants to, be in the mediation process. I'm going to ask you all the same thing about who you want to attend.
Well, you know what we need to do? I think we need to let the folks in the Mount Wilson neighborhood know what's going on, and that this project that we have worked for years on is potentially in jeopardy. I mean, I understand what you're saying about the court and the mediation. I understand all of that. But why should we have to go through that when it just seems so simple? It really does. We signed off on it last year. All we're asking is for an extension for one more year.
Even with less than what we had.
Right.
We've said, okay.
Yeah. So it puts all of this to rest. That just seems like such an easy solution. And
I can see Matt Wilson project on hold until county responds.
What kind of deadline are we under for DCA?
June 30th.
I mean,
June 30th.
and it's June 3rd. So we're 27 days.
And actually, I'd say that's the deadline. We need to get this letter to them sooner rather than later, because basically, they look at things as they come in, and so we need to get this out to them. I basically told Tony that we need to get something. If we're going to do the letter, we need to try to get it out by the end of the week.
I like Mike's suggestion, we go to the meeting.
We have to lose. I mean, go to the meeting and say, why won't you sign it? What's the issue?
they told us the issue.
Not some of the
I don't know
words.
what the,
Basically, I've told Tony the option. I said, listen, either we can send the letter as I've drafted it, or we can go ahead and go through the mediation process. The one thing, and I've said this probably several times, but we are prepared to have a process in place to protect the grant money. And that's why we have Plan B going through the service delivery statute process.
We need to do everything we can to not enter into another mediation which will look like lawsuit, this or that. I mean, God, we can't stand another one. And I think that's the push, and there's a reason for that. And three of us know what that reason is. So, that's why I say, we got to go to Tony and say, tell us what you really are. You're not going to sign anything? I mean, is that?
Maybe I'm way off base here. From my understanding, we're okay with the library and road maintenance funding. Is that right?
Yes.
Is that right?
Main Street was the other one.
Yeah.
Main Street,
They're
no, we know what they
not
said
gonna-
about Main Street, so
they're
it
not
is what
gonna
it
change
is.
it.
Our Main Street is going to be funded because it is.
We're gonna fund it ourselves, yeah.
We're gonna
Yes,
fund
so we're okay with that then. We're okay with handling that because we
Yeah.
cut the funding to the airport. So, I mean, we use their funding
No.
for this.
City residents pay for that
We're
airport.
paying
through
for
our-
that airport.
through
I'm
their
saying the
general fund.
city, a portion of their tax dollars does not go towards the airport.
No, because their city portion of their county tax dollars goes to the airport. So
Right.
so
That's
again, we
right.
were not gonna tax our citizens twice
Absolutely.
for that
But
airport.
we're taking that additional monies and we're
Yeah.
going to apply it to our Leroy Rogers Center and our downtown. So we've got downtown and Leroy Rogers complete. All right. To avoid another legal battle with the county, I guess my question is, could we agree the end of, I guess, our deadline, so to speak, would be the end of the legal dispute amongst water, sewer, and I guess that would be it, because E911, the only thing we have to really do to that is define what an emergency call is.
Well, also funding though.
Well, the funding is going to come from us.
We don't
I mean-
care, do we really care about a deadline, to your point? If there's never a deadline, then we'll never give them any money for E911.
No, that's not the case. We have to, because I think they got Supreme Court law that backs their.
But we gotta have what's behind it in order to know
But
what
if
to
we
pay them.
define what an emergency call is, I believe that dispatching is covered with our city tax, or with our county tax dollars. Only the EMA services should be reimbursed, because I'm pretty sure that the sheriff's department does not come into the city limits, does it,
Yes, they do some.
for non-emergency calls?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, then those would be reimbursed, but I mean, of course, their fire doesn't, and we have what's it called,
Mutual aid.
mutual aid for that, so that would not be a reimbursable.
Just, we have to determine, and they need to tell us that ABAC, and I believe, or maybe
But I would've-
does not pay either.
Right,
So why do we need a deadline?
that's what I'm saying.
That's my point.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
It's the question, Rob, why do
So-
we need a deadline? Just sign the letter.
Well, that's what I'm recommending for us to take into
Do
consideration.
we need a deadline then?
I'm with you.
I think DCA is going to require something.
I thought
If
that's
they
where
come
that
back
came-
and say a deadline, then that is what it is. But if they don't, we will submit it as no deadline, and they come back and go, no, guys, it's got to have a deadline, then we
Then
put a deadline.
Then,
But how
the
many
county
days are we
puts a
gonna,
deadline.
how many days are we gonna let the clock tick before we find out DCA does require?
John West, or whoever it is that likes it,
I mean-
see, are they gonna take it without a deadline?
Well, basically what we had told them, that we were gonna draft the letter, and then we were gonna send it to them for their review and make sure that, they.
Send him the letter that he gave to you.
And then, Rob, I would empower you, or I would ask that the council empower you to go and talk with Tony about defining what an emergency call is and going forward. And then have them come first with a price per non-emergency call. If it's by the hour, if it's by call or whatever, then we can reevaluate that and determine how we're gonna fund that, because
I would
that's
just,
gonna come out of general fund, that's what it's gotta do.
I would please leave the emergency calls alone for right now. We will come back to that. If the deadline is the kicker, it's the bottom line is that ECA says we have to have this. This is exactly what we did last year, and we have to have facts. There's so much statistical data. If we just submit and we do not have any boundaries whatsoever, it really puts us in a.
Do you remember
very
Chairman
difficult
Thompson and I
situation.
had a conference call with the Commissioner of DCA and some of the folks that work on service delivery?
Yeah.
So that we could be very specific. Basically, probably the same conversation that Tony and Rob had with DCA. That is very specific. This is what you gotta have. And we walked out and said, okay, we'll do that. That's what we'll do. And that was last year.
That's a fine.
Is that Tony?
If it is, you can go get
You can go
it.
and answer that. So,
But,
so what is our risk? What is our risk if we do like Wes said and we go with the letter that Tony sent? What is truly is our risk?
I would like to talk with Andy Welch before, we.
I don't mind that. We got what, how many days? 17 days?
27 days.
27 days. All right, so, I mean, we
I'll
can,
talk to him in the morning.
how long is he gonna be out of the country?
No, he's back.
Okay, well, good.
Came
Well, in the
back.
meantime, what if you sent it to DCA just as a, hey, would this be
A
acceptable?
rough draft.
Because that could end the discussion with, well, you might not even have to have it with Andy Welch, because DCA might say, no, that's not acceptable, you got to have this in there. Do both.
I guess at the end of the day, what we're trying to, in my opinion, I guess, and Jack, what we're trying to do is avoid another legal battle with the county.
Yes.
I understand that.
Yes.
And that, which is what we've been trying to avoid,
Which is
But I
Which
think
was
what
the-
Rob is saying though is that we gotta have a plan B in
Yes.
case things don't go through, in case we
Yes.
don't agree with this letter or whatever.
Because
Because we don't wanna lose our grant.
up until last
Oh, I
week,
agree.
we thought we were avoiding legal battle. We thought we were on good ground and mutual ground. We thought, it was, like I said, very positive, very upbeat. The reports, we had great conversations, everything looks good, and then
Well, if you.
the needle's off the record,
so
and
I-
not so much.
I got the letter from Tony Rowell. I responded to Tony on Friday.
Uh-huh.
We have not talked since, he's gotten my letter. So, my first plan will be to talk with Andy Welch. I'd like to get, his input. And then, after discussing with Andy, I can talk with Tony and let's see where we are. But I still would encourage y'all, let's just try to start putting the pieces in place, just so we're prepared. If we cannot get something to DCA that's satisfactory to both the city and the county and DCA. We just have to protect ourselves, making sure that we have a plan B that'll be effective and protect us, and it will.
I think that makes sense.
All right. Have you had any conversations with Jim Carter, the county manager?
But it could be this letter takes care of it, and there,
And
we
I,
can find out
Hopefully,
tomorrow.
hopefully.
Yeah.
Let's find out tomorrow before we go down this other path.
I don't want to, I need to at least start down the path to get the pieces in place. It's not going to cost much money to schedule, mediators and.
Because of the deadline for
I don't
DCA.
know, but my point is, if DCA will take this letter and Andy Welch is okay, then boom.
They may not tell us that right away. We can send the letter tomorrow, we may not get a response for a week,
Well,
10 days.
But let me
I hear you, but
I just like to let these
that's
things
another-
take a parallel path,
Okay.
and that way we're prepared for any eventuality.
Okay, so your next steps will be to personally contact Tony Rowell, the county attorney, tomorrow after you've spoken with Andy Welch.
That's right.
And then also to check with DCA to see if the letter that the county is proposing, or the changes to the letter that were proposed, would be acceptable to DCA. Did I understand that
Well,
correctly?
I don't know that I'm ready to have that conversation until I've talked with Andy and I've
Okay.
talked with Tony.
Okay, gotcha, okay.
And then if I think I've got a pretty good idea of what you all are thinking as far as what you can accept or not accept. But I think that there may be some things in that letter that may be unacceptable.
Okay.
And I'll get that cleared up with Andy, and then I'll get with Tony, and then we'll see where we are. But as I said, I will still continue just trying to get some names, get some dates, and get things scheduled so we're prepared to move forward with mediation. Should that be the path we've got to go.
Let's be careful that the perception is out there that we're moving toward some type of litigation. mean, we
Well, I don't know how we
need-
can say any clearer that we want to avoid any litigation, mediation. Let's work it out amongst
But
ourselves.
we're moving toward that, and I just
Yeah.
want to be sure we haven't exhausted everything else before it's out there that we're moving toward that. We
Right.
can't stand that.
I don't see us moving toward it if we start at least getting a plan B together in case we need it.
But Jack,
It's not moving towards it,
you made the
that's just
comment.
building our insurance in case we need it.
Yeah, and you made the comment, there is no negotiation. It's by golly, it's this way, or we'll see you in court. And that's, I'm afraid what this is gonna,
And I agree, that's why I
Yeah.
said, okay, we've
Yeah.
taking those others off the table because the others are in court.
right.
And then the other thing left is the E911. Well, it's to their benefit as much as ours to come up with how much we're going to
You would
pay.
think, yeah,
Because we ain't paying
Right.
till we come to an agreement,
Right.
on what it is. So that's my point. But moving toward them with, okay, give us these, just.
But if we identify to DCA that E911 remains an outstanding issue for discussions, that's not a problem.
But
It's
is
a
it
piece
though?
that we can, that is something that we can certainly hammer out, down the road. It's not something we need to resolve before June 30.
DCA doesn't care how we define a non-emergency call. They care about who's providing the service and how it's being paid.
That's right.
Well, we can agree that we are paying for non-emergency calls. Our county tax dollars pays for emergency calls.
but
Right
they
now,
haven't
we are-
agreed to that yet.
That's what they've already agreed to.
No, they haven't given us, we haven't, no, you just said it, we haven't defined non-emergency, and we don't know what we're paying.
Right, we
But
have
we
to,
know what we're paying.
We know what we're paying.
going to pay
That's what we
once
have to
determine
define.
what they are.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We're going to pay it no matter what. We have to. I
We
mean,
agreed to pay it, we just don't know what
We
it is.
just don't know
we're
what it
paying for.
is.
we just don't know how much.
Yeah, that's right.
And that,
Which
that-
one's
they
falling
don't,
under which category.
they don't care about, that's the only thing they care about is who's providing the service and how's it being paid.
right.
And that's
so
what we
like-
gotta keep in mind when we think about DCA.
Right.
We
Yeah,
don't-
they don't
The, I guess the particulars, they could care less about.
That's
you know.
right, and that's why I'm saying is that DCA doesn't care. I mean, what we have proposed to tell DCA about E911 is that currently, the county is covering emergency calls throughout the county, and that, the non-emergent calls will be, are still subject to discussions and negotiations as far as,
We have that.
payment. We recognize
We
that
have
we
a
pay it,
money
we have to
budget.
pay it, we just have, we don't know the formula yet. Okay? So I've got a good idea about where we are. I will, try to keep everybody informed, and then, we'll just kind of see. Like I said, I really don't understand why we can't just do the same letter we did last year. But I don't know what Tony's issues are, but I'll find out tomorrow, and we'll work through it as we start. But I will still kind of start putting the pieces in place for the other in the event, we can't come to an agreement.
And again, I think it's important that we communicate with our counterparts on the county commission. And, so if you feel so inclined to make phone calls and leave messages.
We'll be doing that.
I've done that and was surprised to find that the two that I spoke with had not been informed about any of this.
That's the problem. I'll take it back. I did talk to Jim, but he says that Tony's handling it all right
Yeah.
now. So do you want to have any word about Tony and Andy's, what his opinion is by tomorrow? Because there is a work session tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I think we need by tomorrow at 5 PM, we need to know what their intent is and what we need an explanation. Like I said, two of the county commissioners that I spoke with knew nothing about any of this. So that's why, and based on the conversation that I had with the commission chairman, I think that's who's driving this train.
Well, I will
So-
send an email to Andy Welch tonight and ask him if he's got some availability
Okay.
first thing in the morning,
Okay,
and then that'll jumpstart things, and I'll
Thank
try to
you.
get in touch with Tony.
okay. All righty. Any other comments concerning service delivery?
We beat that horse. to death.
Yes, we have. I am so sorry. That just makes me so
Yeah, I want
sad.
to just remind y'all is that who suffers is the community, because y'all are going to be held in the crosshairs if we don't get the word out, just like we have been. It's just lessons learned, but the community is the ones going to say, what are y'all doing if we don't explain that.
You're right. All right, let's move on to item number 4 under old business moratorium on walls and fences.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This is this is on the table or been postponed. Again, this started with a chain link fence in Goodrich Alley. Aesthetically, not the greatest thing. Everything was done the way it's supposed to. However, it's been brought to the DDA's attention. Last meeting, Bruce did ask the Merchants Association about just kind of opinion. I think we've had, good polling, but half of them said, yes, we don't want any new fences, and half of them said, we don't care if there's new fences. So that did not help. So before you, there are three options. One, make a decision not to allow any future fencing or walls. And again, the tight downtown district area. Number two is revise the LDC, add some language that identifies some restrictions. Or three, not make any changes to the LDC at all. So if I had to give you a recommendation, again, there's always variances, there's always a loophole, there's always this and that. So realistically, this fence has cost more staff time for us and aesthetically wipe out than anything in the downtown area. And again, we can't find any really solid language. If I had to recommend something, I would say that you follow number one to make it very, very clear, and that puts an end to it. But it is whatever you feel.
Any comments for discussion tonight?
I'm gonna leave that up to y'all.
Any thoughts, Frank?
So half the downtown folks that we asked said they don't care.
Yeah, it probably doesn't affect them. But again, we're talking about such a tight area.
Yeah, it really affects only
Just
very
a few
businesses.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it was, most of them said, leave well enough alone. Like, don't put it in the ordinance. And then the other half said, yeah, we need regulatory control. So each person worded it a little different. It was split right down the middle.
Okay.
I think the DD understands it conceptually. They get it. Again, it's just this decision's if you want to add some language or you just not want to do anything.
So if we went to made the decision not to allow any future fencing or walls to be constructed downtown, what kind of effect would that have? You don't see any problems?
Bruce, I'll ask your opinion. I really don't, especially in the alleyways.
If we don't allow any more fencing or walls to be constructed in the downtown district, you see any issues with that?
Danny and I talked about this, but downtown is a zero lot line district. I mean, so for most places and cases, the buildings occupy off the lot line, not in all. So it's less the occasion than more that you don't have a place to put it in.
Yeah.
But there are some. That answers your question.
Okay. So I recommend we just don't allow anymore.
Yeah.
It's just we have until next meeting, so if you'll just think about that with the pleasure of the council.
Okay.
It's just one of those things that.
But you've got your three options there in our packet to, along with if we decide to just revise the current LDC, the language that could be potentially be included.
And the reason why, because we had an issue of one fence being constructed causing issues and potential issues with, getting access if there's a case of emergency or a fire or something. It's a very, very tight area we're talking about, so that's why I would decide, I would say not to allow any future fencing.
Okay. All right, y'all be thinking about that. And if you have any questions or anything, of course, we can reach out to Pete or to Rob or to Bruce if anything else comes up on that. All right, we're in the new business section of our agenda. And Emily, I'll call on you to present some information about Peachtree Recovery Services.
Good afternoon, Mayor Council. Peachtree Recovery Service is an agreement. They are a property damage recovery service. As it stands today, if any city property is damaged, we are not recovering those fees from any claims. Any of the property could be signs, guardrails, lighting, signals, paving, bridges, drainage structures. If we sign the agreement with Peachtree Recovery, who is through GMA, there is no financial obligation from the city. There is a 16.5% administration fee that we would pay, and they would send us 0.5% of the damages that are recovered through claims. This is a third-party company, so we would not have any man-hours put in here trying to recover those claims.
If you remember, we did some accident recovery on the hazmat side. We were a little overzealous with our budget number, but we have collected over $25,000 through the insurance companies, which we probably wouldn't have done so. This is another one of those areas that there's a lot of cities using this service, because what happens usually in an insurance claim, we just don't follow through after something is damaged. And I'll give you a good for instance. Just a couple weeks ago, we had a drunk driver hit a decorative pole, completely smashed it, tore it down. Someone else ran one in downtown, just ran right over it, so now we have to replace 2 poles. We have the police report. The other one, I don't think there's a police report on it, but in all actuality, we had to write a check for $7,200 to replace the decorative poles. This type of recovery obviously would help us. The great thing is they go back 3 years to look at all our
Statute of
insurance
limitations.
claims to say, look, you never paid for this transformer. We had to cut a check of $12,000. And we just, normally we can't finish it, or if it ends up in the insurance companies, we don't have anybody to reach out to say, well, you owe us and it's depreciated this much, or whatever the case may be. And I really think this is worth a try to do this, especially on the reimbursement of property that we've seen a lot of damages that we just got to pay for.
I have reached out to references, client references, the City of Valdosta, City of Atlanta, City of Noonan. They all spoke volume of Peachtree Recovery Services. They said there was no headache on their end. Every 30 days, they get a check. Obviously, the first year we'll receive quite a bit of funds from it, and then it kind of trickles off after that. It is a 3-year agreement.
Okay. All right, any questions, gentlemen, concerning Peachtree? Okay, thank you, Emily. Thank you. Okay, the next item is call on Jonathan to talk about the agreement with PlantNet for fiber transport services.
Give me that microphone volume thing. Let's do you. Turn it up on your tongue.
It always takes some playing with, let's say it that way. So what we're working on is we basically have to go negotiate into an agreement with PlantNet. We have had internet services, or not necessarily internet services, we've had dark fiber optic services between all the city buildings ever since PlantNet was a part of the city. So this is basically cables that, for lack of a better way to describe it, run from building to building to building, connecting all the city buildings. Without it, our telephones don't work, we can't get on some of the server applications and some of those things. Well, that initial agreement from the sale of PlantNet was 10 years, and we got the services for free. 10 years ends in October. So we've been negotiating a contract with them for what will it cost for us to continue using these services versus trying to go to some other vendors or try to install it ourselves. So that's what this agreement is the negotiation and the contract that I've worked with them to basically keep using those services that we have. Some modifications, we're requesting them add a few more lines and a few things like that, but that's basically what this is. And I'm asking for a long-term contract because this is one of those items that I feel we can't do without.
Is this a budgeted item?
Actually, it is, and if you remember, I told you these are some of the costs that this is new costs that we've seen, and luckily we're able to have the extra money. But Jonathan probably has, between this and some other technology that we have to be on, pretty close to $70,000 of new monies. But yes, we're covered, and the budget contains that.
Yeah. And they're in the individual departments and enterprise fund, like the gas, going to the gas fund pays for that.
Pays for the internet.
So
When there's
ultimately,
cables going there.
well, it's never been broken out. Let me say that because we've never had any costs associated with it. But yes, we can break out the costs individually because it's not penciled in that way, particularly on this agreement. But internally, yes, we can charge certain departments, enterprise fund departments, we can charge X amount to those departments for those services per
Just
month.
like vehicle maintenance, that'll be an internal control, but.
Correct.
Well, yeah, I mean, things like, you know, the landfill or gas department, wastewater, those individual funds need to pay that.
Yeah, every department will pay that has the fiber that is referring to. Just one lump sum is in IT right now is a contract price. I think it's $34,000. So as the months go on, what we're going to do is calculate based off usage every month certain percentage will be allocated to each department. But yes, every department will pay that.
Essentially those-
And is that something you can measure, the usage per department?
I was about to say, actually, this particular piece is not measured by usage. This is more of a light switch. It's either on or it's off. But yes, we do have a monthly, or we can calculate a monthly usage for, our monthly cost for that building per se.
That's right, building, that's it,
Yeah.
usage per building. Because if there's 3 buildings, then obviously it's going to be more.
Right.
And if y'all happen to be interested, I do have a piece of what the fiber optics would look like if you'd
I'm
like to see it
actually
after.
It's unbelievable.
After the meeting, if you'd like, I can explain that.
Well, what shoot on this?
So that was a piece that I have from a previous employment where a squirrel got a hold of the fiber optic cable.
So how
and
many
disconnected
of those little wires are off?
So there are 4 bundles of 12, so there's 48 fiber optic cables in that little bundle, and they go, and that one's not even full to capacity.
Can we get 2?
So it depends on them. We're in the agreement, we're getting 2 of those fibers, which is just a little bitty, I mean, you can barely see the fibers themselves, but we get 2 of those for each building is what we're agreeing to.
Really? So in this case, this one's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is that right?
It should be 12
Those are
inside
bundles.
of each one of those little,
Yeah, see, those are bundles, and there's
Bundles.
12 little wires into each one of the bundles. So you're getting 2 of the little ones that are inside that green bundle.
so, like I said, I can explain in a whole lot more detail.
So our wire's not gonna be this big.
After hours, let's say it that way, after the council meeting.
Yeah, y'all get together afterwards, that's a great
Hey, you know,
idea.
we gotta know what you're paying for, you know?
Well, that's like, when I was going over the contract
Yeah.
with Jonathan, I said, we're getting 2 of those, we're paying how much?
Yeah. So
My
again,
gosh, I should've got, no
I
wonder
don't
we
wanna-
tried City Net.
I don't need to know how to make the watch, I just wanna know what time it is.
But I will tell you that Jonathan did a great job of negotiating the price, because obviously if you deal with a cable company or AT&T or someone else, you know what it is. So he did a great job in negotiating that for us, and it's at a very, very good, solid place.
Okay. All right, any other questions, comments about that? Everybody good? All right, thank you, Jonathan. I'll call on our police chief, Buddy Dowdy, to talk to us about the school resource officers.
Mayor, Council, as you know, for the last several years, we have signed a contract with the Board of Education in an agreement to provide school resource officers at 4 of the schools. We met with them a couple of weeks ago. We made a couple of changes to the contract that were at our request. We got it signed. Mr. Pete has it. They once again will be funding 100% of the time the officers are in school, so it's budgetarily neutral for the city.
How many officers we're talking about?
5.
Is that down? Did we have more than 5?
It's always 5.
Oh, okay,
All right,
good. I'm happy.
thank you. Thank you, chief. All right, the next item on our agenda is discussion of the proposed amendments for granting enterprise zone incentives. Pete, we'll let you and Jessica
Jessica, if
talk
you
about
want to
that.
kick us off, I'll follow up with it.
We talked about this a few times, and mainly every time an enterprise zone application comes up, we're like, oh, we should have done this. So staff has taken some time to throw out our first shot at scaling those incentives based on the investment amount. And there are 2 proposals, one for commercial and one for residential. And the costs we're thinking going forward, in 2021, the current enterprise zone, which includes the majority of downtown, will expire. So this is really looking at, the next few years as we go into the urban redevelopment zone and thinking about the properties that are located in, the new enterprise zone that we will create once the current one we have expires. So we're thinking more residential, smaller investment pools compared to some of the projects that we have approved lately in downtown. And the tax abatements would be, like I said, valued based on the project estimate. So this is, just our rough draft. We've also included an agreement. Rob drafted that, the state law and our ordinance, and I included our ordinance in there if y'all want to pleasure reading. And this is also a draft on the agreement. And if y'all want to add anything else, I think that the agreement says that we can require any documents here, and is that correct, Rob? Okay. If y'all want to add anything where if they're getting an incentive based off jobs, they have to maintain those jobs for a period of time, if y'all want to, so things like that can be added. So right now, it just kind of is an open end if we request it. But I think from a staff point of view, I would like to have more detail in there of what you all expect us to get, and just the checks and balances to make sure that they're still qualifying for those incentives, and that their incentives are being given out based on the value of the project to the community overall.
Yeah, good. Yeah, it's really a non-biased. It's very comprehensive but simple. A lot of the language, like the question here, that came right off the statute. So if someone really is checking the blocks and they're doing historical buildings and they're going the extra mile, we could certainly tell that. Just a couple admin points, and this is again for your discussion and what you think, but residential construction, I really believe, it's my thought that it must be the owner, that the owner should do this, because I think the agreement, Rob, has owner owns or leases certain property, and I don't know how y'all feel, but if you have an incentive package that you turn around and lease that to others to make money off that may be something that we want to consider. But the residential must be owner. Again, if you sell or close, or you don't close, the incentive should stop. On the commercial side, I noticed there was a little error on tier 3. So if you're up $251,000 and up, that's 10 years at full amount, meaning you get 5 years at 100%, and then we have to graduate at 6 through 10 will be 80%, 70, 60, and 50. So that was just an admin catch. But again, I think it's a solid draft. We've been toying with this and toiling with it, and finally we met. It's a great approach for us going into South Tifton. Again, as we close out some of the ones that will be up in a year, this is really, I think, a good approach to investors, and it gives away good monies to start seeding other areas.
I think it looks really good. I think this is exactly what we've been asking for, and especially with the expiration coming up anyway of the main areas that where most of these that have applied in the past have been funded. So, any comments, questions, concerns? Y'all just read over that. We can talk more at the next meeting. Okay. All right. Thank y'all for working on that. I know that took a lot of time to pull all that data together. All right. Let's see. Resolution for adoption of the FY 2020 budget. Pete? Nothing to discuss there, is there? Do you have anything for city manager report?
Just a few things as follow. This coming Thursday, we have a volleyball tournament. It's part of our wellness program. So if any of you like to come out to Fullwood Park, it starts at 5:30, and the city is playing the hospital. Emily has organized something with the hospital. It's a volleyball tournament, and we've been practicing, so I think we're going to operate the hospital. How about that? So
It's only 97 degrees out there, so.
Yeah, that's all right. Let's
Bring a couple of ambulances.
Yeah.
So the weed, does that mean you're playing?
Yeah.
I'm not playing.
From the
Trust me, Mary, I did not think you were.
No.
And you know I'm not.
Senior Center, I wanted to share this with you. In our meeting today, Fran told us that it was Older Americans Month. And we had 563 seniors attend 3 luncheons. We delivered 570 congregate meals to outside of the senior center. And then the area aging, it's a region type thing, and it's obviously a committee and organization, but our senior center is ranked #1 in the entire area for aging. I thought that was pretty cool.
There. That's awesome.
So the senior center is really doing a lot. Fran and her staff are doing some great things, but seeing those type of numbers, it's pretty big. And then lastly, on an employee side, I want to tell you, Tim Cooper and Kevin Smith from the fire department have announced their retirement. And I think Chief had a little ceremony for Tim Cooper, and then Kevin Smith will be later on this month. So be looking for some information on that. And then employee anniversary, and I always like doing this, but Bobby Bennett has been our chief for 2 years now, and anniversary date, so 2 years have flown by. But Ricky Hobby, he just went over his anniversary date, and he was hired in 1998, and Jessica was hired in 2012, so they all hit their anniversary. So great stuff for employees this month. We had a lot of milestones, and I wanted to share that with you. And then lastly, we had our second month with no accidents, no injuries.
Yeah, good job, good job.
Yeah, the wellness committee's doing great things. It's working, so real proud of that.
Okay. Before we conclude our meeting, we will need to go into executive session for just a few minutes for legal matters. But before we do, I'll just go around. Any comments? Frank, you want to start with comments?
Of course, we had DCA representatives in town today. Bruce hosted with the DDA, and they looked over our downtown. Of course, so we're recertified as a Georgia Exceptional Main Street City again. They're very complimentary of all the projects we have going on, both public and private projects downtown. And it was a great day for us.
Excellent, very good.
Got to showcase the city.
That's always fun to do. That's good. Wes?
I'm good. Now, Pete hit on it. Captain Cooper, I was going to give my condolences or congratulations, however you want to say it.
Trust me, it's congratulations.
Condolences for the folks I know that worked under him. I know that he was well respected in our fire department, and he's truly going to be missed. So if you'll pass those words to Mr. Cooper, that'd be great. It'd be great.
All right, Jack.
I was approached at a funeral about an old traffic light. Have you heard the discussion that we've got one that's very old?
I was surprised about that too.
And you can be named Old Traffic Light City or some kind of, don't ask me what it is, but it's.
Where is it?
Do you remember? I was half listening because I was in the cemetery.
Overall, Congress Way or something?
30 Congress Way, and there's one at 4th Street, and there are very few of them left
Really?
in the United States.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But
They're very rare.
But we ought to do something, you know, if it's,
Shine that puppy up.
you know, put a
Give it a bath, you know.
big sign up there that says this is a, you know, whatever.
Historic
Somebody was
landmark.
suggesting that we actually try to find old ones and put them in the downtown district or something.
That's going a little bit to the extreme, but anyway, I was approached and I said I would certainly
We should get
follow up with
or
that.
a guy just hits the, button and it turns it red and yellow and green or whatever, and then the horses start bouncing around. Put it in historic district.
And this conversation is definitely taking a downward turn
So,
on that because it is. I mean, you know,
It's a
honestly,
designation.
it's something with historical value, and if we've got it, we might as well flaunt it, and we can have a big sign that says we're a old traffic light city.
World traffic light capital of the world.
That's gonna be right next to Reading Capital and Turfgrass Capital and
Added to the list.
Golf Cart City.
They're
and-
having an awfully good time with this over there. I don't know what they're doing. Let me share this with y'all. Real excited. I, work with our outreach marketing group, our tourism group that does all kinds of stuff. On June 22nd, we have a Rock the Block that will take place out here. Now, we will all be in Savannah at Georgia Municipal Association meeting, but our folks will be able to be here and have a good time, and the river will be the band that night. But another thing that we're doing is working with WALB to spotlight all the various things that can be done in Tifton for visitors. For it may be about the arts, it may be about historic districts, it may be about special events. So we're going to have a series of commercials that we'll be working with them on, and OMG is covering that. So again, just highlighting our community and sharing what's going on. And if y'all did not have a chance to go out to the TIFF Theater over the weekend, the play Little Women took place Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon. They had a matinee, and Doug and I went Sunday, and it was spectacular. It was very impressive. And I just continue to be impressed with the partnership with ABAC, what's going on there. Kaylee's doing a terrific job. During this play, I didn't even connect all these dots, but during the play, Brian Ray, who is the theatrical director for ABAC, ended up being in the hospital for surgery. So our Kaylee had to step up and really help with the production and everything, but the play was just exceptional. It was very, very good. And from what I understand, very well attended the other nights. So Sunday afternoon had a pretty decent crowd too. So when you have the opportunity to go to these events, Doug said it best. We saw someone later and he said, you know, I always kind of go reluctantly, but I'm always glad I went when I go. And he just said, you know, he was very impressed too. So please try to support our TIFF theater every chance that you get. That being said, we will adjourn this meeting once I get a motion for someone to go into, for personnel and legal matters, we'll need to go into executive session.
So moved.
All right, is there a second?
Second.